Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Max and TV. I'm your host, Max Landesman. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking to Joel Kirstein. Joel Kirstein is an absolute expert at branding and marketing, specifically in the consumer packaged goods industry. He's worked on behalf of numerous Fortune 500 companies, such as TGI Fridays, Smoothie King, Keurig Dr. Pepper, Zales, Marco's Pizza. He's created a collectible for the Spider-Man 2 movie back in 2004, I believe. And most notably, he created the original artwork for the Jim Beam Ultimate Griller gift set. That was such a big deal was because Jim Beam was actually, their barbecue sauce was delisted in Walmart. And when a product gets delisted in retail, you don't want to be there, trust me, because your product is literally in what we call product hell. You literally cannot, nobody wants you. Like, once you get delisted, you're out, done. And we're talking about Jim Beam. Jim Beam is a freaking massive brand. So people think, oh, if you just get a big brand name on there, it will sell. No, that's not how this works. It takes more than just having a big brand name on there. Clearly, Jim Beam, big brand name, goes into Walmart, sucks, can't sell anything, and they get delisted. So what happened? He created the artwork, and he created what happened to be a Jim Beam gift set, which there are pictures here. What turned out to be a delisting, now Walmart reordered 250,000 units, and Walmart told them they had a 98% sell-through rate in the fourth quarter of 2011. Walmart said that when people were coming in, they weren't just buying one, they were buying in sets of 2s and 3s. They were buying one for themselves, they were sending one to their Aunt Shirley, and they were buying another one for, their nephew. Really unbelievable. So he got Jim Beam's barbecue sauce back into Walmart, which is a huge freaking deal. Not only that, his proprietary branding was rolled out to 6 different retail chains and sold an additional 230,000 units for just that quarter. Branding is a huge deal. If you want to sell in retail, if you just want to run a restaurant chain or you want to run a business at all, you have to have the right branding. Joel Kirstein is a person that really knows his stuff backwards and forwards. He really knows his stuff. I'm very pleased to have him on my show. It's a real privilege and honor, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. Enjoy. So we have here Joel Kirstein. Joel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, nice to be with you, Max. It's really a pleasure to be here and be able to talk about retail, what I'm really, really passionate about, and what we see going on in retail and how retail is changing from a brand perspective and retailer behavior.
So how is branding changing over the course? Have you seen a huge change over the last 5 years?
Yeah, I would have to say that the type of branding that I see being most successful is the type of branding that I subscribe to, and where I live and breathe is having branding basically that the delivery system, the physical packaging, is as compelling and unique and distinct as the product itself. You want packaging in my opinion, you need to have packaging that's going to keep on selling for you long after the purchase has been made. So it's packaging that you really like, that you keep around, other people see as they come in contact with it in your home and in your environment. And people say, wow, I've never seen that before. That's really cool. And it tells a broader story about the brand, in my opinion, is it speaks highly of them when they have packaging that is as compelling as the product itself, whether it's because it's got a lower carbon footprint, the packaging is ergonomically designed, and a bunch of other factors that really, in my opinion, help to elevate the brand to a different type of thought space, that the consumers go, wow, I never looked at that brand that way, and they make a very, very good impression on multiple levels beyond just the quality of their product. You have other brands that have a tendency to put all their money into a really cool delivery system, but the product under-delivers, and all good branding does for a underperforming, under-delivering product is basically hastens its demise, because more people find out that this isn't the product that they would buy again, because cool packaging isn't going to isn't a sustainable type of strategy if that's all you have going for yourself.
Right. I always wonder, talking about a packaging perspective, I've ordered stuff from, obviously large brands. Let's take, for example, Best Buy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you get a package from Best Buy, it does not say Best Buy on there. I assume because they're delivering higher end electronics, they don't want them stolen off somebody's. But then again, Amazon puts their logo on there. Walmart puts their logo. Best Buy doesn't. A lot of others don't. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I would be in agreement with you that it's a lot of reasons. They're wondering, okay, is somebody going to steal this off my porch? Whereas other retailers, like you mentioned, like Amazon and Walmart, they're not shying away from that, and I would agree with their position on that. I think if somebody sees a substantial looking box on a doorstep, in the middle of the week on an afternoon, and there's nobody around, it doesn't make a difference whether it says Amazon or it says nothing at all on the box. They're going to go for it. And that's unfortunate that we have to deal with porch pirates, and especially during the pandemic, as people are ordering more and more stuff than they ever did before. Now you have, now we have to go to great lengths to try to figure out a way to mitigate pilfering.
Yeah, this actually happened to my sister-in-law. I actually made a post about it on LinkedIn, where, she gets a notification from Amazon, your package has just been delivered. They send you now a picture of it actually sitting on your porch. She's like, okay. She went to her front door, opened the front door, and the guys literally opened her package in front of her.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable. It's not, this is not a bad neighborhood either. We're talking Miami Beach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the guy just freaks out, just drops the package and just starts running off. They did catch the guy. It's unbelievable what goes on now. You are a brand expert. You've been doing this for years, especially in the licensing game. Can you explain a little bit more about what is licensing? How does it work? Can anyone, if you just had enough money, could you just go to a big brand and say, hey, I want to license your product? How does this all work?
Absolutely, you could, but I'll show you, take you through the process of where it goes. So you buy the rights to an entertainment or sports property. So let's say, for instance, Star Wars goes to McDonald's and says, the next big Star Wars movie that's coming out, we want to do a program in Star Wars. So they do a branded up McHappy Meal, hypothetically, and to help raise awareness, as if Star Wars needs any more top of mind awareness, but they do. And they go and they'll have that at McDonald's or a sports property. You being down in Miami Beach, the Dolphins will do promos with QSR vendors, which is quick serve restaurants. Movies will do promotions on retail products, usually Marvel superhero type of properties. And basically, it could also be just specifically an athlete. Somebody like Pat Mahomes in the NFL now, obviously, given his success and leading the Chiefs to a Super Bowl 6 months ago, he's obviously a very, very attractive endorsement entity, as well as celebrities who endorse products. Yes, you, Max, you can go and put your 6 or 7 figures down on the table and say, hey, I want to buy the license for this, because I want to use that borrowed equity of the licensed property on my product, so it'll raise its top of mind awareness and sell more products. And on one level, so long as you have the money, chances are they'll probably sell you the license. On the flip side of that, there's a lot of things that you have to be able to deliver upon. Max, do you have any retail relationships? For instance, like at Best Buy or Walmart or Target, or down in Florida, Publix, the grocery chain, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have relationships with them that can guarantee they're going to buy this licensed product? And though that everybody seems to think that if you have a licensed property, that's like a winning lottery ticket because everybody's going to want to buy it. Well, not necessarily, because one, if you don't have the license, you don't have rather the retail relationships, because if those retailers that I just mentioned don't know you, they don't know whether you have the ability to deliver product, manufacture it, have a reliable supply chain, and they'll check out all of those things to make sure that you're a stable, solid company with a track record of consistent on-time delivery, because as we know, there's no being late at retail.
Right.
And they want to make sure that you're able to deliver, as opposed to a lot of people figure that I'll just buy the license and I'll figure out the rest as I go along. And most good entertainment studios, the pro sports leagues, NASCAR, UFC, WWE, the NCAA, also very, very smart and savvy marketers, they're not going to want to deal with people who don't have a structure set up, who they're doing it on a wing and a prayer, and they look like a house of cards. Now, there is a retail entity that helps people get into that realm called ECRM, and ECRM is fantastic, and I've been dealing with them for over a decade, probably even more than that. And basically, ECRM is like a cartel, and they hold these confabs all over the country. Right now, they're doing them all virtually because, again, of the pandemic. And what happens is that they get you into a captive audience when it was live and in person. So let's say I was at one in February of last year. You go to Las Vegas, you're in a big ballroom, you set up your new product on a table, and you basically have a litany of retail buyers from all type of, for instance, like with my product, it was a retail grocery consumable, edible product, barbecue sauce. And I had a litany of buyers coming in every 10 to 15 minutes where I get to give my elevator speech. And the buyers will ask you, about what your cost per unit is. They'll want to know how many products you can get on a pallet. They'll want to know about your distribution. They'll want to know everything, which, by the way, they already know the answers to, but they're just basically doing a gut check to make sure that your answers jive with what they know. And the reason why they know the formula or the algorithm so well, Max, is because of the fact that they come from the product and brand side. So they know how much shipping is going to be. They know how much 9 ounces of barbecue sauce in a bottle is going to cost. They understand all of the particulars on a horizontal and vertical platform. So they know whether what you're telling them is the truth or whether you're trying to blow smoke. And that's a really, really big, a very, very big situation. Further to licensing, let's say you get past all of that, and Max's barbecue sauce everybody loves it. The retail buyers want to buy it, and you get it into, hypothetically, Publix, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, a couple of other regional players. So you have enough retail penetration that you're going to make money, because also they're not going to sell you a license unless you can make money, because if you don't make money, you still have to pay for the license, because the minute you sign, it's one of the most one-sided agreements a business will ever undertake and endeavor to be successful at. So if you don't sell product, you still owe Disney or Marvel or Universal or the NFL or UFC all that money. The clock is ticking the minute you sign. So a good partner will make sure that you're going to sell enough product so that you are able to obviously be profitable, but to pay them, and you have to pay them the licensing fee, which could be as low as $75,000, but licensed entities like the NFL, who are obviously the hottest thing going, Disney, Marvel, UFC, a few other players at that exalted strata, are 7 and 8 figure type of licensed properties. So on top of paying the license fee, you also have to pay royalties, which can go anywhere between as low as 5%, 8%, sometimes as high as 12 or 15%. Everyone is different. There's no one size fits all situation. And then the other thing is, if Max's barbecue sauce does really well, they're going to say, Max, we think this is a really big hit, and we not only want to do this for you in 2021 because it works that far in advance, we want to do this with you for 2022 and have an option for 2023. And that's something that can be challenging because, again, you know, a Marvel superhero typically has a very long shelf life and typically doesn't burn out, because if the movie is good, it creates a lot of excitement. Kids, you know, have their parents, you know, they want their parents, when they're going up and down the grocery aisle at Publix or Walmart, to buy the products with that Marvel superhero on it. So it tends to have a very long shelf life. Conversely, if Pat Mahomes has another great season this year, that's if there's even an NFL season, and let's say next year he gets hurt and he doesn't play, and the following year in 2022, you know, he's not having a good season for a litany of reasons, what happens is that his selling power now is vastly diminished, and it's possible that you, Max's barbecue sauce, could have a whole lot of inventory that isn't moving. And that's something that's a very, very, you know, big challenge that you have to be mindful of. What's your exit strategy? You know, you have a return policy. Now, all these things are negotiable, but you have to be very, very mindful that this is something that certainly you might be able to deal with, because for every type of property, licensed property, that's not only a home run but a grand slam, you have a lot of ones that tend to be a flash in the pan. They're amazing the first year, and then they're flatter than can be in a second or even third year. So again, a lot of people, the uninitiated who get into licensing, you know, think that it's this panacea, like a winning lottery ticket, and you just keep on buying more licenses, and it's a guarantee to make money, and it's not, because, you know, some people are able to get into a license before the thing blows up and it becomes really, really successful, and sometimes you're really lucky that, like, things like Transformers back in the day, Shrek, The Simpsons, all those things had absolutely no gravitas whatsoever when they first came out, and then they were very lucky. They found an audience. They had lightning in a bottle, and even a very good case history would be in licensing. SpongeBob SquarePants, when that started about 20, 21 years ago, it didn't have an audience because it was very unusual, and people weren't sure, is this really for kids? And what happened was Nick would show that late at night, and college students started watching it, and it developed a cult following, and then from the cult following, it had a mainstream following that made it the commercial success that it endures at today. So, you know, so you never know whether you're going to catch lightning in a bottle or you're going to get something that has tons of hype and it just doesn't catch fire. It's just, there's no guarantee, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. You're making me feel old. I remember as a kid, when I came home from school, I watched SpongeBob as a kid. So just to think about that, how many years ago that was, holy hell. So to allude to your point, 100%. So people think that you can just, you know, let's just pay Patrick Mahomes whatever he wants. Let's just put him on literally anything we could possibly put him on.
Right.
As a product and think it's going to sell. It's just not the case. I think Matt Higgins, he's a vice president for the Miami Dolphins. He's into a lot of different products. He's on Shark Tank. He said, he's like, people think you could just hire a celebrity or hire an influencer with 1 million, subscribers think you can just, he's like, that's not how this works. There's a lot more to that. And maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about what is that next step to make it all work. It's not just like a million people see it. There's got to be some sort of follow-up process. What more is into it is it?
Absolutely. What Matt said, you know, the amount of money and R&D that goes into a licensed property is nothing short of staggering. The amount of detail, you're testing things. And one of the things that, whether it's barbecue sauce or a new type of entertainment entity, a superhero, cartoon, or so forth, people understand that this just didn't get whipped together in the last 6 weeks or even 6 months. This has been going on for anywhere between 18 to 20 months at the minimum to maybe as much as 30 to 36 months. And that's really key. The timing is really, really key, because one of the things that people lose sight of, even when you're in the process, is I remember having a conversation in 2010 with Marvel. The company that I was with was doing all kinds of seasonal gift sets with superheroes on it. Really, really cool stuff. Very fun stuff to work on. And growing up reading Marvel comic books in the golden age of comic books in the 60s and 70s, I mean, this is like I was the kid locked in a candy store. I was able to go crazy and eat as much candy as I wanted. So it was a lot of fun. And I said, so what do you have long term that's going to be the next big thing? And I had to sign my life away and my firstborn for them to tell me, this is what we have in the pipeline. And we've been working on this, Joel, already for a year, and we're shooting at about 2012 for this. And again, because I signed an NDA, I can't say what it is. And what happened was that when it came out, and it was a new comic book character that was going to have a new comic book and everything, new animated series, and obviously it's going to wind up morphing into it being part of the Marvel Universe and family of superheroes. And it was flatter than a 2-day-old can of soda sitting with the cap off. It went nowhere. And I'm sure most people, unless you're into comic books, and I'm not anymore, I kept on looking for it and it didn't go anywhere. And the problem is that when you're thinking about doing something, you start developing it in 2009 or 10 for 2012, part of the problem is it'll be incredibly relevant in 9 and 10, but maybe by 12, that sensibility, that magnetism has, you know, died on the vine or just withered and blithered away, because it's just not, it missed its window. And if you rush it to market, I believe that underdeveloped products, whether it's a frying pan or whether it's a new Marvel superhero, is not going to be able to endure and not going to be able, it won't have the legs to be able to go where you want it to go, because of the fact that people are going to start to see where the holes are. And that happens a lot, because we see new products come out. Case in point, one of the product developments that came out that was actually a very good product. You might remember Microsoft came out with the Zuni, which was the competitor to the iPod. There were actually some features on the Zuni that were better than the iPod, but it didn't have that iPod cool sort of thing. You know, there's two types of brands like Apple and Coke and McDonald's, that are what we call in branding emotional brands, because they transform their indigenous realm, and they wind up just being this cultural touch point and a part of pop culture. And also, you know, their products are terrific products, good quality, good price, very appealing. The Zuni, is, Microsoft and Pepsi and Burger King, though they're very successful, very good quality brands, I'm not knocking them at all, they don't have a level of emotional brand equity that Coke and McDonald's and Apple have. And when the Zuni came out, a lot of people Microsoft actually got a lot of hostility about it because people were saying, oh, you're just copying Apple to copy Apple. And they didn't get a lot of respect. And you still see people with iPods, and the Zuni hasn't been around for, I don't know, at least close to 10 years. It just didn't take off. It didn't sell. They spent easily, I would say, $1 to $2 billion developing their own version of the iPod. And when it came out, it was flat as a pancake because people are like, Zuni, iPod, iPod.
Right.
So, it's very, very, it's a very, very flawed science and very, very inexact art form to be able to develop a brand that people are going to respond to. During the pandemic, I think that brand developers and product developers, Max, have an advantage because people are looking during very difficult, challenging times like this. People are looking for stuff to be excited about, to capture their imagination. Do you have something that, to answer your question, do you have a product that is going to help to affect change in behavior in a way that's compelling to people, that makes things easier, that appeals to people's intellect and their sensibility, and they say, yeah, I like this because this speaks to me, and this is something that I feel that is good for me to be associated with. I want people to see me with this because I think it speaks well of my choices.
Right. That's exactly what I think Starbucks is. There, I believe I've heard the story. I'm sure you can probably validate it or not, but there were people that, let's say they were on a set of a TV show or whatever. They would go to McDonald's, let's say, get a cup of coffee, toss the cup and put in the Starbucks coffee cup with the logo just because they want to be associated with Starbucks.
Yeah.
That, I think, just really speaks volumes in terms of what branding really means and why someone would be willing to spend $2, $3 on a cup of coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's all about perception of what does that brand mean beyond the, the quality, the flavor, the taste, and so on and so forth. Case in point, Nike. Nike has this higher perceived value because of what they do. And even when they had a lot of bad PR, and even when, because of their manufacturing processes, and also, for a while, it kind of looked like they weren't being as innovative with their shoes. But that brands like Apple and Nike are always going to come back because they recognize, okay, sales are softer now. What did we have out there that got us to this mushy place? And what are we going to do to get out of it? And they always seem to do that. You look at a brand like Apple. Imagine Tim Cook trying to follow in Steve Jobs' footsteps rather. To me, that's the type of opportunity that you say to yourself, there's no way I could ever do anything as good as Steve Jobs, let alone better. So, where do I go from here? And that's really, really a daunting task. And I give him a lot of credit because he's trying to have a proprietary Tim Cook era at Apple that people, when he's gone, are going to look at and say, wow, he had an incredibly impossible task to follow in Steve Jobs' footsteps to be able to maintain that level that Jobs achieved and then take it up from there. And I think that in the final analysis, I truly believe that people will say, yeah, Tim Cook was successful in doing both of those things.
Right. One thing I didn't actually realize was that Steve Jobs doesn't know anything about tech. I could not believe it. Like, he wasn't a tech guy. He just knew how to sell it. He knew how to brand it. Just to say, I think the difference, there was, I think it was a very famous YouTube where they came out. Why is Apple different than everybody else? You mean to say like nobody else was as smart as Apple? Like nobody created a product that was just the same? What was the difference? Apple said that we were creating, I don't remember exactly what it was. They weren't creating like, you know, they're talking about the dimensions of the product, how great the product is. They're talking about like the person who's buying the product. It's like someone from the outside or something, they want to buy our product as opposed to just specifically the product, so people connected to it more, I guess. So I think, there's no question branding really has, you were going to say something, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because you brought up a very good point, is that they were looking at, I'm a huge Apple advocate. I've been working on a Mac. I saw the first Mac in 1983 when I was at school at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. And they said, in 5 years, you're going to be doing all your design work on this. And by the time the person said that, I had my hand up and saying, you know, where do I sign up for courses? Where do I get one? And in less than 5 years, about a year and a half later, I bought my first Mac in 1985. Here we are in 2020. So 35 years later, I think I've gone through 8 or 9, maybe 10 generations of Macs. All of my media is Mac. And to their benefit, they weren't trying to impress tech people and engineers. They were trying to impress myself, yourself, and people who said, this is really, really cool. But beyond the fact of the tactile experience of holding it in your hand, which is, of course, invaluable, because right away, that's how you establish a quality proposition. What they did, as I interpret it from the outside looking in, and I've even told them this, and they said, you know, we never heard anybody say this. They created a culture of products, you know, and especially in the last 10 or 12 years, what I call the culture of products, like iMacs, iPods, iPads, iPhones, and who knows where it's going to go from there. And I'm excited to see where it keeps on going to get better. And they do everything that a brand developer and a product developer should be. They affect change in behavior. They go and they stimulate your mind to take. They make the most sophisticated products incredibly easy to use. And then further to that point, they go and they make it so interesting that if you have any degree of intellectual curiosity, you're going to want to eventually do a deep dive and see, what can I do more with this product, not just you know, using it to you know, to use Photoshop or InDesign or stuff like that. What else can I do with it? And the answer is everything. And that's not only highly meaningful and significant, but incredibly sustainable for them. And I think what sets them apart, they're not looking, to your point about it wasn't about the technology. If they didn't have the technology to do that, no problem. We'll create proprietary algorithms and proprietary levels and layers of technology that we need to do what hasn't been done before. And that to me is absolutely outstanding. And the fact that they could make it so simple, you know, that's really, really something. My dad was a very, very technically inclined guy. He wanted to go to school to become an engineer. He wound up becoming an electrician because he didn't have the means to go to school after he was in World War II. So anyways, my dad was the type of person that he could look at anything back in the day when you needed an engineering degree to hook up your stereo, because it was just absolutely incomprehensible. And even when I got my first Mac, my dad hooked it up for me because it was also very, very challenging. I'm not a technically inclined person, and I don't have the mind for that. But the way, the methodology of how Apple goes and makes incredibly sophisticated technology so easy, and that antiquated for a term, user-friendly, you can't ask for anything more than that. And by doing it that way, I never felt that they were dumbing it down. I felt, if anything, they were being incredibly successful at top level communication. Explain it to people on a level where it's relatable to them. Stimulate them, get them excited about it, and then people are going to start to do a deep dive on their own. They're going to feel comfortable to ask questions. How do I get to the next level? Where is the next level? How do I do what I don't even know how to do yet? And Apple had all the answers for that and more.
So I'm assuming that anytime you go shopping anywhere, well, that is when we actually could go shopping, you probably have a very hard time with probably a lot of things. You're like, you walk into a store, you're like, wow, there's just so many missed opportunities here. They could have done this or that. Is there like a form? Is there like just, I'm sure not every business is the same, obviously, but is there like a streamlined formula for an overall to how to get someone to want your product or service?
Yes and no, in the fact that there are a lot of basic tenants and premises that you have to subscribe to. And it's all common sense stuff, Max. So you're right about that. But every category is different. Every category, I've found that in almost 40 years of being in marketing, advertising, and branding, that the ground is shifting constantly underneath our feet for a lot of reasons. As product development becomes more and more pervasive thanks to technology, what held true in the 80s is completely sometimes irrelevant now as we enter the second decade of this millennium. So that's really, really important. You can't do business the same way. There are a lot of advantages because of the fact that now you can, because of Apple with the Mac, you can get your branding, your product development, and not just designing nice graphics, a logo, interesting packaging, but also, your CAD/CAM for the physical structure of your bottle, your box, your delivery system. All of that, the timeline has been sped up to the point of being on steroids. And that's actually a good thing because you can get stuff done really, really quickly. What's happening is that because society, the rate of adoption of new products, especially technology, just keeps on getting shorter and shorter, exponentially shorter and shorter, you have to be able to be, I think, really immersed in that, to know that when you're working on something in 2020 you're hoping you're going to get it into the market space in 2022, will it have that level of electronic magnetism that people are going to find it 2022 cool and say, oh, that was kind of cool 2 years ago. That's so yesterday. I want something that's not just ahead of the curve, but bleeding edge. And that's I think that's a really, really good thing, because as a marketer, as a branding guy, and now as a product developer, it really, really pushes you to have to look at every aspect of your product to make it so compelling that people can't ignore it. Because going back to licensing, just slapping a character on a box of cookies isn't going to cut it. You have to make those cookies interactive. Make it so the kids are going to have activities to play with it. Have user-generated content so that the manufacturer is collaborating with the consumer to drive products that they want to see. I heard a really great line years ago that said, if you want to know what the future is going to be like, go out and create it. So you really, really have to, I feel, look at your product in a way that's going to appeal on so many different levels. Obviously, you can't be all things to all people. That's impossible. But what you can do is appeal to the same people on different levels and different opportunities and situations. And that to me is very, very key.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I want to go more into Target. I know we talked about Target.
Yep.
That you use them in our talk about why they are super successful with their layouts, and maybe not everyone is kind of doing that. What makes them so successful?
A couple of things. One, the physical landscape of their stores, I believe, makes for, especially the new model stores. And I know that there's a very impressive Target location near where you're located in Miami Beach. We have a couple of really exceptional ones here in Dallas, Texas. The physical layout is really key because I've always looked at how grocery stores lay out their stores. So they put the milk and all the essentials at the back of the store to make you traverse through the entire store so that you get to see more products en route to getting your staples, the things that you always buy. Target does the same thing also, and what's really important is that they don't do it in a way that alienates or annoys people, but you're walking through the store and it has a really great, not to sound flaky, but a really great feng shui type of energy that you go through the store and you're amazed that you've seen so much stuff in such an efficient and effective path. And that's really key. They've also done a lot of physical things as far as shelf height, which is really important. Case in point, if Max's barbecue sauce goes and gets sold into Target, the buyers like it, they want it, you're going to have a hard time being at eye level with all the national brands and category leaders. You might be down at ankle level, which is where you don't want to be because of the fact that people typically will not do this. They look here, maybe here, but not down there. So what they've done is that they've changed the height of their shelves, and that's really very important. The other thing that they do is they buy products that benefit them, and the Target buyers will always say, how does your product benefit us as a retailer? And it's not just about sales. Obviously, that's the number one concern, but also, do you elevate the Target brand in and of itself? Do you go and is this adding to the cachet, the allure of going to Target, where you see, I can feel like I'm buying good quality products that have a very aspirational level, that people who are very financially conscious of their spending dollars, and they feel like I'm getting a product that looks really high quality. I like the sensibility of it. I like the design. The quality's there, and it's just as good, if not better sometimes, than a national brand and a category leader. And they've been phenomenally successful at that. And that's something that I feel that a lot of retailers are not doing, is having the type of products that when you go into Target, and I don't feel that this is true of other retailers, you go in there, you see a product like dish soap, hand soap, other type of household products, and you go, yeah, that's a fit. That's a Target product. And they may not be from the same manufacturer, and they're usually not. But what it does, Max, it tells a story. So you have this seamlessly woven fabric of product offerings that look like they're part of an overall family. And again, they're not from the same manufacturers, but what they are is that they have a similar sensibility about them. And they have a lot of quality to them as far as being aspirational, as far as being, the type of products that you go into, and it conditions the consumer. Every time I go into Target, I'm going to see quality products, and it validates and vindicates my visit coming here. And that's really very significant and very key, because good prices are very important, but that can only go so far. So what they did is that they extended the consideration in consumers' minds, and they really, I believe, activated the discussion, because going to Target, they've succeeded in making it a proprietary retail experience. And for my money, there aren't enough retailers who do that or are willing to do that.
Like, I know people who shop at, let's say luxury clothing places, whatever. You'll be surprised. They love Target clothing. And one thing I do notice is that if you're to shop at Target to buy clothing, it's not really discounted. It's just, this is the price. And like, people don't really think about it, as opposed to just walking somewhere else where it's always 40% off, and it just cheapens the brand, I believe.
Right.
So everything that you said makes a lot of sense. And I think it does play into their bottom line, right? In terms of that, they make an investment into, the CEO of Target. He made a huge investment in revamping the entire stores, rebranding everything, and it seems to be paying off for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's astute observation that you made, because Target and Walmart, they buy more than anybody else. So to your example of, this is the product and this is the price, and not because it's not good quality, because I buy, and I have no hesitation or reservation to say this, I buy my clothes at Target and at Walmart because I find what I like there. And it's the type of situation where, true, you may not be getting bleeding edge stuff off of the runways of Paris and Milan, immediately at Target or at Walmart. But what happens is it trickles down soon enough, and you start seeing things that you like. And because we live in an ultra casual world, every day is business casual. So we're
especially in Miami.
Yeah, and especially when it's hot like hell here in Dallas, which usually is from April till October. You want stuff that because we're all mentally conditioned is, I don't want to sweat like crazy in expensive clothes, because that's really going to bother me. But if I sweat like crazy in inexpensive quality clothes, I'm okay with that. So there's that. Target and Walmart buy more than anybody else. They see what people want, and especially people who are your age group, not old guys like me. And basically, they smartened up and they realized, this is the low-hanging fruit. And if you make choices available to people, to your point, who can't shop at Coach and can't shop at Giorgio Armani, now they can find somewhat similar choices at Target and Walmart. This is the reason why you have all these big name brand fashion designers that are doing lines at mass retailers, because they see, again, this is the low-hanging fruit. You have hundreds of millions of people who shop there, and I described it one time. I said to somebody, there's two types of people that shop at Target and Walmart: the ones that shop there and the ones that never admit it. And it's the type of thing that, I give them a lot of credit for being smart about that, and realizing, we could either have that 1%, and try to compete with people at this level who obviously they can't compete with. Or what we can do is try to appeal to people in the middle of the road who might dial down their buying power to here while we're going through a hard time. And in the middle of the road, maybe they'll go up here, because before all of this happened this year, the economy was doing very, very well. And they had options at every price range. And they had the flexibility that high-end retailers like department stores and like super high-end premium retailers do not have. So I give them a lot of credit.
Right. So to your point, we were mentioning Walmart. Years ago, probably 10 years ago, Walmart, everybody hated Walmart. They thought they were abusing the system. They never paid anybody, so on and so forth. How were they able to kind of jump out of that, and that now people hate on Amazon now. How are they able to kind of change their image, essentially?
I give them a lot of credit because it's still a work in progress, because they accumulated a lot of negative equity in how they went into small markets and drove legacy type of retailers out of business. Their production situations overseas came under a lot of criticism. A lot of retailers 10, 12 years ago were very frustrated dealing with Walmart because it wasn't an equitable type of situation. It was basically, this is what we want, here's how we want it, you don't like it, get out. And
Right.
They didn't care. And it's what I call, they had what I call the heavyweight championship boxer mentality. You're wearing this big belt and you're thinking you're impervious to anything. You're absolutely the greatest boxer ever, and everybody who came before you is irrelevant, and you're omnipotent and nobody can touch you. And we all know the reason why you became champion is because you knocked out the guy who was champion before you, because it doesn't just happen. There's obviously a stream that takes you to that point, and eventually they realized that, the negativity towards Walmart was almost suffocating, and they started to get really, really smart. When I was working at a company on the East Coast and we're selling in all these seasonal gift sets, and Walmart bought a lot of our products, and I found them very, very good to deal with. There was none of this, coming in there and saying, change it to this, we only want that, you don't like it, get out. It wasn't like that at all. Now, I don't know if it was like that before. I had heard stories. My experience doesn't reflect that. I think that they've done a lot of things. They still continue to have challenges, but they've done a lot of things to rehabilitate their credibility. During the pandemic, once we emerge from this to a better place, I believe that they're going to be considered one of the winners in this one of the winning stories, at least a success story that is, from the pandemic, because of the fact that they've proven themselves to be a trusted public provider, where they managed to get their inventory back up to 100% capacity, because the first couple of months of the pandemic, there were a lot of products that you couldn't see, and it's very, very upsetting that if you're going into doing your food shopping, if you shop at Walmart or any other retailer, whether it's Publix or Kroger's or Albertsons or anybody else, if you go into a store and you see a shelf that's 20 yards long and it's completely empty, that's very, very new in the American consumer experience. We've never experienced that in our lifetime. And it makes you, and it freaks you out, and you begin to think, oh my God, is this going to be like what people experienced in the Soviet Union 40 years ago, 50 years ago? They stood in line for hours to go grocery shopping. They went into the stores, there was hardly anything on the shelves, and they had to buy stuff that they didn't want. That's if you could even find anything to buy. And Walmart, held the line, and they did what they needed to do, and now you go into Walmart or Kroger or Albertsons, and you're finding everything that you want to find, and the situation has leveled itself out. And what's really great about that, Max, is people are looking at a time like this for trusted partners, people I can count on, people I can rely upon. And Walmart, like Kroger and Albertsons, just as an example in grocery, has gone to great lengths to show we have the products that you want. They're all doing delivery, and then on top of that, they're providing you with a retail experience that you can go into safely. Nobody can completely eliminate the prospect of catching the virus, but at least you know when you go to those stores, they've done a great job at mitigating the risk to an acceptable degree. And I don't think that you can ask for more than that.
Right. So obviously you've been very successful. You've been doing this for over, what, 40 years?
Almost, yeah.
You've worked with Dr. Pepper. You know, you created a collectible from Spider-Man 2, the movie. You've worked with Marvel, Disney, Cartoon Network, just to name a few. You've made over $100 million for your clients. All of that is really unbelievable, and you deserve a round of applause. Was there anything, but I'm sure it didn't just magically was there ever like a big failure that maybe you learned something from that maybe you can share with us?
You know what? I have to tell you, big failures, no, because, at times, certain projects, like I'm working on a project now to get it into retail, and unfortunately, I'm a COVID casualty because of the fact the product that I've been working on for a couple of years, the delivery system is a collectible in a uniquely shaped glass jar. And the jars are coming from China, and obviously, once this hit, everything has been at a standstill. People would look at that as a failure, but when something takes twice as long to get to market, so long as it eventually gets to market, I see that as a setback, not necessarily a failure. Failure is a really good thing. There's a famous saying that I'm sure I'm getting it wrong, but I'll try to paraphrase it, from Michael Jordan, where he said, "I've succeeded because I failed." And you go, and failure is really, really I think very, very useful and important, because what did you learn from it? Have you developed a sense of resiliency? Have you improved your analytical skills? Obviously, failure is fraught with teachable moments, and you have to be able to zone in on that and not waste time, licking your wounds. And also, it should be a very, very high level of organic motivation. This didn't work, so why don't we try this? Or why don't we look at that? Because at a point when you've been working on something for a couple of years, it's only natural that you're going to at times lose perspective. And there's so many different moving parts of trying to get a product to retail. And some of the failures have been where for instance, got a product to retail, but the supplier, either a co-packer or a contract manufacturer who made a food product, Max, great product, but they were very, very difficult and challenging to deal with. And that had nothing to do with the business of business. That's just human nature. And human nature being what it is, it never changes. Some people need to be able to have copious amounts of drama attached to everything that they do. Other people are very challenging to deal with, as we all know, because they're ineffective communicators, where they just don't share and they don't tell you what's going on, or they don't tell you what's going on when there's a problem, and when there's a lot of money and so forth on the line. That's not a good time to find out that somebody suffers from selective laryngitis. So yeah, those are the type of failures that you say, I'm never going to work with that person again. And that's fine, because the bottom line is that I would say 90% of a successful relationship is liking who you work with. And if they can share your vision and mirror and match your intensity and your level of being a perfectionist and wanting to get things done right the first time, and willing to go the extra mile is the absolute minimum that they bring to the table, you're going to be successful. And because there's enough things that you have to deal with that you have no control over, and things, no matter how well you plan and how prepared you are, and I believe you live and die by your suppliers and partners, you're still always going to have stuff that comes up and basically and basically it's going to throw you a curveball. And then the definition of success or failure is going to be, what do you do to pivot and swivel to deal with it? And you know, the biggest waste of time, a lot of people get caught up in finger pointing, and a lot of people get caught up in trying to dodge and evade that they're not responsible for that. And all that time that's wasted, you can go and fix the problem. There's an old saying that there's never enough time to do it right, but there's always time to do it over again. So,
right.
You know, I've seen that be proven to be true in almost 40 years, thousands of times. And so long as you get it done right and you get it on shelf and it's not late, it's a success. Was the process perfect? No, it never is, and it's probably never going to be. But you know, life in and of itself, what we do is a microcosm of life. In and of itself, life is never perfect, as we know. Life is a very broken, flawed process, and dealing with people is a very inexact science. So you know, it's all about not even a fit, but to what degree can you fit with people? And that's
and I think that's actually probably the biggest reason why, you know, going to somebody like you for branding, it's because you've been doing this forever. You have all the connections. Something goes wrong, you're like, I've done this 20,000 times. You know, I have the relationships already. It's not like you're forming a new relationship in a sense where, you know, you don't know if something's going to happen. The guys suppliers have delivered for you for years. It's a lot that you've already gone through the ringer in a sense, and it's you know, you have the experience obviously. And so one thing that, you know, a lot of business owners just simply don't understand is that you have to continue to improve, I believe. And I think you can say this probably better than anyone. You can't just sit there and just expect that, you know, just because today you're on the top of the mountain, that doesn't mean you're going to be there tomorrow. And so, you know, Yahoo at one time was the world's largest search engine. Right. And so you got to stay top of mind. Branding is extremely important. And I want to give you the floor. I want to, you know, is there anything else you want to just your message out or anything of that nature, just for some final points?
A couple of things. One of the areas that I've been very, very lucky to work in is in private label branding. I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. Canada tended to be more like Europe in the sense that with private label brands, there was a much earlier adoption of that as a retail product option. It's more of a recent development here in the United States, and a lot of Canadian influence here in the U.S. in private label brands is what's helped move the needle forward in PLBs here in the U.S. Because back in the early 80s, when I was in school in Pittsburgh, generics came out, and people said, I don't want to buy something in a black and white can that just says peas on it, and even though it was 9 cents a can, it's probably not as good quality as a category leader and a national brand like for instance, a Green Giant. And fast forward a number of decades later, we found out that a lot of manufacturers that make category leading and national brands like Kellogg's were creating cornflakes, obviously, for them, and cornflakes for smaller retailers. So they were double dipping. The quality is exactly the same. And now we're at the point where the quality of private label brands sometimes exceed the quality of national brands. Have I found the ketchup that is as good as Heinz ketchup? No, and we probably won't, because
Heinz is freaking awesome.
Heinz ketchup is the best that there is. And they've done a lot of product development coming up with spicy ketchups, with ketchups mixed with mayo, which I really like, and also ones that are very low in sugar, because
that's exactly
I found out 10 years ago how I love ketchup since I'm a kid. I found out how much sugar there is in ketchup, and I freaked out. I couldn't believe it. With private label brands, you know, they're not going to replace national brands and category leaders, but we've seen at retail people like Target and Walmart, Publix, Kroger, Albertsons, and so forth, the private label brands are getting higher up on the shelves and encroaching on the national brands. And that's a good thing because they'll never overtake them. But what they will do is force more innovation, creativity, and product development from national brands and category leaders. It's good, healthy type of competition. The other benefit that private label brands do is they give retailers an option to carry products that they don't need to pay royalties on, and it gives them now more leverage to go to the national brands and categories leaders and say, look, listen, I sell just as much of Max's ketchup as I do Heinz. Now, obviously, I'm not getting rid of Heinz, but we have to talk about our relationship local to royalties and our exit strategy and our return policy. And once upon a time, the brands would come in and tell the grocers, this is what it is, and there's no discussion. Now there is a discussion, and that's a good thing, because I think there needs to be more equity between the retailers and the brand so that they have a positive type of environment to function in, where it's like a tennis match where the ball goes back and forth, in an equity type of situation. If it's going to be one-sided and a blowout, ultimately nobody benefits from that long-term, Max.
Right. I was actually once, it's really funny you say all this, because once I was in a grocery store in the Northeast, and I was in the frozen section with the fries, and they had, this brand of fries, TGI Friday brand, you had this brand, that brand, all the bigger brands. And I was looking on the back, they were all manufactured by the same person.
Yeah.
They were all the same people, coming from the same place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good example that you mentioned that about license. That speaks back to what we started off this discussion talking about licensed products. And when, once upon a time, the idea of selling restaurant branded product at grocery, people would say, I don't want to sell my product there, because then they're not going to come to my restaurant and buy, the products. They can buy it at home. And one of the people who were very, very successful at that was, various different restaurant chains. You mentioned Fridays. And to me, having product in there, so to your point about French fries, if you're buying frozen French fries, you can get, I love Arby's fries. The curly seasoned fries, I love them. I've been eating them for decades. And I'm sure I'm going to go to hell for all the French fries I've eaten. Anyways, having said that, I thought that it was a great idea when they started selling them, whenever that was, at retail, because what it does, it keeps Arby's, and Checkers and Rally's does the same thing. They have really great home fries. Red Robin does the same thing. They have home fries. And what they do, it creates top-of-mind awareness outside the restaurant. So when you're going shopping and you're thinking, oh, I love Arby's fries, so Joel goes and buys a bag, and now I have it in my head. I can have it at home, and when the bag is finished and I really want some fries, it's gonna sit in my head until I go to Arby's and go through the drive-through and have their seasoned curly fries. So a lot of what do you call it, restaurant brands saw that this was the low-hanging fruit, and you weren't cannibalizing your sales. In fact, what it was doing was, again, marketing to the same people in a different way, in a different opportunity. And to me, that to me shows a lot of creativity. That to me, certainly a very basic level of innovation, but it's all about how do you get in front of people. And right now, with the pandemic, sampling at retail grocery is completely gone, because it's not safe to do until they blow the all clear whistle and we can all go back into the pool. But, I believe that smart brands are going to now start doing the type of sampling, and you talk about innovation, that if I had a client like that, I would say you need to partner up with either DoorDash or Uber Eats, Amazon, and figure out a way how to get samples of your product in people's hands at a time like this. Everybody likes to get something free. Everybody likes to get something. True. Yeah, everybody likes to get True. Something, Max, that they don't have to go out of their way to learn or find out about. True. And certainly, people, despite some of the challenges, to your point earlier, that Amazon is having, this is an opportunity that's money, never mind on the table, but loose change and dollar bills all over the ground, waiting for people to pick them up. Partner up with people to create a lot of product excitement. Say, hey, we have this new product, and because a lot of people are not going into retail, so they're not going to find out about a new SKU on shelf. Well, let's try to partner up with our delivery people like Uber Eats or DoorDash or Amazon, and figure out a way how to get this product into new hands, in front of new eyes, because that's what's, in my opinion, is going to create excitement. So that's the sort of thing I wanted to mention earlier that I don't see happening. That's very, very easy to do. Get people excited about this, because we're all home now watching tremendous amounts of broadcast content. I thought it was a very smart thing that for a short period of time, people like HBO and Showtime gave people free HBO and Showtime. Get them addicted to it, get them hooked on it, and this is the way that they're going to be able to compete on the short term with streaming brands, because eventually I believe that conventional television is going to go away. That you're going to be able, that if you still watch the conventional networks like CBS, ABC, Fox, and NBC, there's not going to be a Tuesday lineup, a Thursday lineup, a Monday or Friday night lineup. You're going to have the shows. You're going to be able to get them. Hopefully, it would be great if you could get all the shows dropping all 10, 12, 26 episodes at once. But usually, they have to satisfy their advertisers, so they're only going to drop episodes one per week. But I believe that this is where it's going, and nobody is going to have cable anymore. We cut the cable here 5-6 years ago and went into streaming because we could see more stuff without any of the type of repetition that HBO and Showtime and Cinemax and Stars and Epix were all criticized about, that there's so much repeat redundancy of the same shows showing 100 times a month. Whereas when you go on to Hulu or Amazon or Netflix or whoever else is a player in that streaming space, you watch an episode, you move on to the next one, or if you want to watch it again, you can, but you're not going to have it show 400 times in a month at the expense of seeing something new and different. So, so this is the type of thing that I get excited about when brands are doing creative things. And that level of creativity, innovation is not limited just to putting, doing nice design work when I'm working in Photoshop or Illustrator or in design. Sometimes the most creative part of what I do is putting together a deal with the right supplier, with the right retailer, with the right brand. And that's the sort of thing, that success has absolutely been born out of past failures, where you look at something and it didn't drive the results that you wanted, and you looked at why, and there wasn't really so much that there was anything wrong with it, but more a matter of how much further could we have taken this. And sometimes you just don't have that, you don't have that option, either because of time or budget, or the client just doesn't have doesn't have a comfort level with that, and that's okay. Not every opportunity is going to be a home run or a grand slam. If you get on base by beating out a bunt or getting a single that you stretch into a double, that's a good thing too, because that's a rally starter, and that's important as well.
Right, and to your point about the restaurants getting in front of the same customer but in a different way, to take it a step further, Hooters, I believe, is a unreal example of this because I remember watching an interview. The CEO gets up on there. He's like, there are a lot of people that want our product but will never walk into our restaurant.
Right.
So to have that to sell their hot sauce or hot wings, whatever, in a supermarket just expands the brand, expands obviously revenue and the overall experience for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. A very good example of that, that I'm glad that you brought them out, reminds me of Bob Evans. Bob Evans as a restaurant chain is no longer around, but I know that they do hundreds of millions of dollars in frozen food product sales. Fridays does hundreds of millions of dollars in frozen food sales because of the fact that they had proprietary menu items, and very, very good at one point. Both of them had very good, well-developed menu innovation. And what happened is that they found the people that went into the stores and bought, for instance, Bob Evans frozen products, that it was driving business back into the restaurants.
Wow.
And I guarantee you that 30, 40 years ago, there were people within the company who said, yeah, that's never going to happen. And Bob Evans doesn't exist as a restaurant chain anymore. They went out of business, I think, about 10 years ago or less. And yet, and if there are any Bob Evans still out there, I give them credit, but I haven't seen any in years. And I travel quite a bit. And what happens is that their products, I see them every time I go to Kroger, Albertsons, Walmart. They're still very, very prominent and dominant in the frozen food section. So yeah, there's all types of examples, to your point, where people are actually probably getting more, having more success at grocery than they are in their indigenous realm, and that to me speaks to the quality of the products, because again, at the end of the day, I don't care how good the packaging is, I don't care how good the marketing is, the product has to deliver. And the only thing great marketing and great packaging does for a lousy product, either quality, if it's something of a tactile nature, or the flavor, if it's food, is hasten its demise. And that's something that a lot of people a lot of brands still, in my opinion, don't get, because the court of public opinion is brutal. And if people do not like a new product offering that you have, not only will that product offering not survive, but it may damage the equity of your flagship brand, and you never want that.
Right. There's a Museum of Failure, I believe, in New York City, where they have all the different products that name brands have tried, and they completely fail. I think I really want to go visit there one day. I'm sure you'd love it, because Well, yeah. So, anyways, this was great. This is a really unbelievable experience for me personally. I hope it is for others. And it's really the brands that you work with, I mean, are brands that you see on a daily basis. I know you said you had a lot to do with putting, those ads on soda cans, on like Dr. Pepper bottles and things of that nature. It's really incredible, the fact that you're even on my show to begin with. So I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for yours. I appreciate it, Max, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Have a great rest of the weekend, and stay safe. And hopefully, when all this is over, we can have a conversation like this in person.
Absolutely, 100%. I'll be on the next flight out. Trust me.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Max. Bye.
Thanks. Have a good one.